New breast cancer screening guidelines urge younger women to get mammograms. The study, released today by the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force, encourages women to start getting screened at the age of 40. The previous recommendation was to start screenings at 50. Joining us now is Suzanne Price, CEO of Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. Suzanne, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, Suzanne, right away, the new guidelines, this is a 10-year difference. It's pretty big. Why were the recommendations put in place to screen women at this earlier age?
Well, the panel stated that the reason that they moved the guidelines younger to 40 when it used to be at 50 for when you should start getting screened is because they were noticing a huge increase in breast cancer rates in women in their 40s. They actually said that there was a 2% increase per year between 2015 and 2019 in just women in their 40s getting breast cancer. We are continuously at Breast Cancer Prevention Partners seeing women in their younger and younger years developing breast cancer earlier. And this is not just due to earlier screening. These are actual statistical numbers of higher rates at younger ages.
Wow. And I remember
we have been.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
We've been around for the last 30 years studying why more and more women are getting breast cancer, and now are really spending time looking into why younger women are getting breast cancer. Most people don't know that, as you put up on the screen, only 10% of breast cancer cases can be directly linked to genetics. That means 90% of cases are not caused by a person's family history. That means that the increase we're seeing is likely due to something in our environment or in our lifestyle that is causing this increase. And that's what we've been studying.
Okay, and this to me is alarming because at first glance, 2% doesn't seem like a lot, but the numbers as a whole really can impact such a large population. And like you just mentioned, genetics are one thing, but talk about some of the environmental factors that are putting these women at risk.
Yes, thank you. Well, there is an ever-growing body of scientific evidence linking toxic chemicals in our environment to breast cancer rates. Since the 1970s, 80,000 new chemicals have been introduced into the market in the US, and very few of them have ever been screened for carcinogenic properties at all. The US does not regulate new chemicals before they go on the market in most cases. One example of the difference between the way we handle things here and Europe is that in Europe, 2,400 chemicals have been banned from personal care products because of thoughts that they connect to cancer or other harms. In the US, we have only ever banned or restricted 11 chemicals from personal care products. So things are being put onto our bodies and in our homes that have never really been tested. And that increase has happened in the last 40 years. So women now in their 40s are the first generation that has really been exposed to this huge increase in chemicals from infancy through puberty to now into adulthood.
Yeah, and I can imagine all of those chemicals build up over time. Can you give us some examples of what those are? Because on the screen we saw makeup products, sunscreen products, things we use in our everyday lives.
It's true. Unfortunately, some of these chemicals are in our everyday products. The chemicals we are most concerned about are called endocrine disrupting chemicals because they mess with your hormones. So some very common examples are phthalates, which are used in fragrances. And fragrance is considered a trade secret. So you can't see when phthalates are on a label. Chances are, if you're using a personal care product that has fragrance in it and it doesn't disclose what's in it, it probably has phthalates. Another example a lot of people have heard of is bisphenols like BPA. A lot of people are now using BPA-free plastic bottles, but there are other bisphenols like BPS, BPF that act exactly the same way that have often replaced BPA in those quote BPA-free bottles. So we recommend avoiding plastics whenever possible, especially around food and drink, and never ever heating your food inside plastics.
Yeah, and what else do you recommend that we can do to protect ourselves? Because I know your goal is not to scare us, but that list of chemicals seems tremendous and difficult to overcome.
Unfortunately, it is. Fortunately, there is a huge industry of cleaner products now that really do disclose all their ingredients and will even advertise no phthalates, no parabens, which is another endocrine disrupting chemical in personal care. And there are a lot of plastic alternatives like using glass or stainless storage containers in your kitchen, using stainless bottles. And then we recommend doing things like taking off your shoes when you enter your home and vacuuming well with a HEPA filter because chemicals can settle into the dust in your home, especially if you have a small child crawling around. You don't want them getting their hands on that. And then eating less processed food is another really easy takeaway because the more processed the food is, the more it comes in contact with plastics and other chemicals in the packaging. So those are just a few small things. And then really ultimately Those little things can make a huge difference. But really, we need change at a societal level, which is why Breast Cancer Prevention Partners is working to change policies and change companies' behavior to not use those ingredients in the first place.
Yeah, it seems like it is quite an uphill battle, but one that is beginning, that's for certain. And before we go, I do want to address, are certain groups of women perhaps more environmentally prone to breast cancer than others? Because I instantly thought in the job that we do, we use hairspray and all sorts of things on our bodies to get us camera ready, for example.
Unfortunately, heavy makeup use and hair product use is a risk. Salon workers are at really high risk because of being exposed to all those chemicals as well. And then certain populations like Black women, the products that are marketed to women of color usually have some of the worst chemicals in them, unfortunately. And we do think there's a correlation with that and the fact that Black women are dying of breast cancer at a much higher rate than the rest of the population.